The wind howled across the rusty metal docks of Outpost 9, a place where hope came to die. Machines clanked in the distance, steam hissed from broken pipes, and the air smelled like oil, dust, and old pain. Raylan, a quiet human engineer, stepped out of his repair shuttle and wiped grease from his hands. He had been called here to fix a cargo loader. But what he saw next changed everything. He noticed a small group of guards gathered near the back wall of the dock. They were laughing, in low, ugly tones, pushing something, someone. Raylan stepped closer. Not because he wanted to, but because something felt wrong. Something inside told him not to walk away. Behind a cracked fence was a holding pen. Inside, lying on the ground with her hands chained above her head, was a girl, not human. Her skin was pale blue, bruised in places, her dark hair tangled and falling into her violet eyes. She looked weak, like she hadn't eaten in days. Her clothes were torn, barely covering her. Her knees were scratched, her lips were dry. Raylan's breath caught. The girl lifted her head, saw him, and whispered something. He couldn't hear it at first, so he stepped closer to the fence. That's when she spoke again. This time louder, her voice shaking. "Please," she said, "don't turn me in to the traitor. I'll give you my body. I'll do anything. Just take me away from here." Raylan stood frozen. The guards didn't notice him yet. They were talking about how much she might sell for. "Schwarek wants her." One guard said, "He pays double for the scared ones." Another laughed. "She won't last a week, but who cares?" Raylan's fists clenched. He looked back at the girl. She wasn't older than 17 by human standards, maybe even younger. Her eyes didn't shine with anger, only fear and hopelessness. He knew who. Jorak was a rich, cruel traitor who dealt in everything illegal: weapons, spice, slaves, especially young alien girls. Anyone taken by Jorak disappeared forever. Some were seen on pirate ships, others in dark markets. None were ever free again. Raylan could walk away, pretend he didn't hear, fix his loader, and go home. That's what most people did. This wasn't his fight. This wasn't his problem. But she looked at him again like he was her last chance. Her hands shook in the chains, and she whispered again, "Please." In that moment, Raylan made a choice. He walked past the guards without a word, showed his ID to the officer at the post. "That girl," he said, pointing to the pen. "She's with me now. I'm taking her under worker protection." The officer raised an eyebrow. "That's not how this works. She's marked for trade." Raylan leaned in, voice low but firm. "She's injured, unregistered, and being held illegally. You want me to report this to station command? Or let her go with me quietly?" The officer glanced at the guards who were now watching. The man sighed. "Fine, take her. But if Shora comes looking, don't say I didn't warn you." Raylan opened the gate, stepped inside, and unhooked the chains from the girl's wrists. She flinched at his touch, expecting pain, but he was gentle, careful. He pulled a blanket from his bag and wrapped it around her shoulders. "You're safe now," he said quietly. "I'm not here to take anything from you." The girl didn't speak, but her body relaxed a little under the blanket. Her lips still trembled, but she didn't pull away. Raylan helped her walk toward his shuttle. Every eye on the dock turned to stare. Some in surprise, some in disgust, a few even in pity. But Raylan didn't care. He had made his choice. As the shuttle door closed behind them, the girl sat quietly in the corner, staring at the floor. Raylan didn't ask questions. He just handed her water and some food paste. She took it with shaking hands, then curled up, still not trusting anything. Not even safety. Raylan didn't sleep that night. He sat at the front of the shuttle, watching the stars move slowly through the window. Somewhere in the black, Jorak would learn what he had done, and there would be a price. But for now, one girl was no longer in chains, and that was enough. Asterisk inside the small cargo shuttle, silence filled the space. The engines hummed softly, and the stars outside drifted like slow-moving lights. Raylan sat near the console, watching the girl in the corner. She hadn't spoken a word since they left the dock. She was curled up under the blanket, knees to her chest, eyes half closed but always alert. He had seen trauma before, soldiers, refugees, broken people, but this was different. This girl, Lyra, looked like someone who had forgotten how to live, like she had been taught only how to survive. She didn't ask where they were going. She didn't care. Maybe she didn't believe she would live long enough to find out. Raylan got up quietly and walked to the back of the shuttle. There was a storage locker with spare clothes, mostly mechanic uniforms. He found the smallest size and laid it near her without saying anything. Then he stepped back and sat down again, not wanting to scare her. An hour passed, maybe more. The girl didn't move. Then, slowly, she lifted the clothes and looked at them like they were something precious. She looked at Raylan with confusion in her eyes, not understanding why he was being kind. "You can change in there," Raylan said gently, pointing to the small washroom. No rush. She hesitated, but then stood up slowly, her legs weak. Her wrists were bruised where the chains had dug into her skin. She walked like someone ready to be hit at any moment, but Raylan didn't move, didn't stare, didn't speak. When she came out, she was wearing the oversized uniform. Her hair was still a mess, her face pale, but something had changed. The blanket was gone, and she was standing, even if just barely. She sat down across from him and kept her hands in her lap. "Why?" she whispered. Her voice was soft, like it hadn't been used in days. "Why did you take me?" Raylan looked at her and didn't answer right away. He didn't want to lie, and he didn't know the full truth himself. "Because I could," he finally said, "because no one else did." Lyra blinked. She was expecting something else, a deal. A price, a demand. "You don't want anything?" she asked, her voice shaking. "I said I'd give you my body. You can still take it. I won't fight." Raylan's face became serious. "I don't want that," he said. "I don't want anything from you, except for you to be safe." Tears filled her eyes. She turned her face away, embarrassed, ashamed. She had offered herself the only way she knew. It was how she had survived before, but now she didn't understand this man. He didn't take, didn't hurt, didn't even ask questions. Raylan stood and went to the food cabinet. He pulled out a heated meal pack and handed it to her. "Eat," he said. "You need strength." She took the pack slowly and opened it. The smell of warm soup made her stomach twist in hunger. She hadn't eaten real food in days. Maybe longer. She ate fast, almost like an animal, then paused, looked up and said, "Sorry." "You don't have to say sorry," Raylan replied, "not for being hungry." After she finished, she leaned back and closed her eyes. Raylan thought she might sleep, but then she said softly, "My name is Lyra." Raylan smiled gently. "I'm Raylan." Another long silence passed, but this one wasn't filled with fear. It was quiet, but peaceful. Lyra finally stretched her legs and looked around the shuttle. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Nowhere special," Raylan said. "I have a small place near the edge of the colony. I fix machines. Live quiet." "You're not afraid Jorak will come for me?" she asked, her voice still unsure. "I am," Raylan admitted. "But I'd rather be afraid than let you be taken by someone like him." She didn't know what to say to that. No one had ever chosen fear for her. No one had ever chosen her. Not like this, that night. She didn't sleep in the corner. She lay on the extra cot Raylan set up for her. It wasn't soft, and it wasn't big, but it was hers for now, for the first time in years. She felt warmth without danger, kindness without pain, as the shuttle moved through the stars, carrying them toward a quiet corner of the galaxy. Lyra stared at the ceiling and whispered to herself, Is this what freedom feels like? Raylan didn't hear her. He was already asleep in the pilot chair. But a small smile appeared on Lyra's lips. Just for a moment. The journey ahead would not be easy. Yorak would not forget. But tonight, she was not a prisoner. She was not. A thing, she was a girl with a name, and she had been given a chance to live again. Yorak sat in his private chamber aboard his ship, the Black Maw. The walls were lined with trophies from every world he had touched. Bones, broken weapons, even collars of those he had once owned. He drank thick red liquid from a metal cup as his second-in-command entered the room. She was taken, the guard said. Eyes low, a human claimed her before we arrived. Yorak's fingers tightened around the cup. The girl was supposed to be his delicate, frightened, valuable. Her kind sold well in the black markets of Nalthor Prime. He had already made promises to powerful buyers. She was meant to vanish, like all the others who. Yorak asked, a human named Raylan, engineer class, no criminal record. Low-level worker, Yorak growled. Then why would a man like that risk his life to take something from me? The guard stayed silent, not daring to guess. Yorak stood and walked to a screen on the wall. He pulled up the colony logs, flicked through surveillance feeds, and found the moment. There. On screen, Raylan. Walking into the holding pen, touching the girl gently, shielding her, claiming her as his. Yorak narrowed his eyes. He made a mistake, he said. He made it personal. Back on the edge of the colony, Raylan's cargo shuttle landed near a quiet ridge. The area was peaceful, far from the markets and docks. The air smelled of dust and metal. His home was small, built from repurposed cargo containers. But it was strong and hidden. He had added defenses, just in case. Lyra stepped out. Blinking at the bright light, she looked around, not sure what to think. This is your home? She asked. Raylan nodded. It's not much, but no one bothers me here. She followed him inside. The walls were lined with tools, old machine parts, a few books, and one tiny screen playing soft music. There was a bunk, a washroom, and a space. That looked like a kitchen. It was quiet, and it didn't smell like fear. Lyra sat down on the edge of the bunk, still unsure. You live alone? She asked. Raylan nodded. Yeah, been a few years now. Why help me? She asked again. Voice softer this time. What if they come for me? Raylan looked at her seriously. Then they'll find out I'm not as soft as I look. She blinked, surprised by his confidence. But part of her wanted to believe him. For now, she didn't feel like a prisoner. She felt like a guest, maybe she belonged somewhere. Just a little, that night. Two men stood outside a small bar near the colony center. Both were from Yorak's crew. And both were angry. One of them held a small datapad with Raylan's face on it. He's, nobody, one of them said. Lives outside the main colony. Fixes loaders and welders. The other spat on the ground. Boss wants the girl back. Alive, if possible. But he said if the human resists, we take him too or make an example of him. They slipped away into the night, armed and ready. They weren't just looking for Lyra. They were going to send a message to anyone else who thought kindness could beat power. Raylan worked late into the night, tuning the solar batteries on his roof. Lyra stayed inside, cleaning the space. She found old pictures, one of Raylan in a military uniform, standing with a group of humans. They all looked tired, proud, and scarred.
No.
She ran her fingers across the frame. You were a soldier. She asked when Raylan came back in. He looked at the picture and nodded. Long time ago, did you fight aliens? I fought whoever was hurting others. He replied simply. Lyra lowered her head. I don't want to run again. She whispered, but I'm tired of hiding too. Raylan walked over and handed her a small device. Then, let's not hide, he said. You want to help? I'll teach you how to fix things, build things, protect yourself. She looked at the tool in her hand. Unsure you'd teach me. Everyone starts somewhere, he said. Smiling, she held the tool tightly. As if it was something sacred. For the first time, she didn't feel weak. She felt like maybe she had a future. But just beyond the quiet hills, shadows were moving. Two men crept closer to Raylan's home, weapons ready. One of them whispered, "Don't shoot unless we have to." Inside, Lyra suddenly sat up. "Did you hear that?" She asked. Raylan paused, then walked to the monitor. A blinking red light showed movement outside. He cursed under his breath and opened the cabinet, pulling out a stun rifle and a small handheld shield. "Stay inside. Lock the door," he said. But Lyra didn't listen. She followed him to the door. Fear in her eyes, but stronger now. Braver. "I'm not hiding," she said. Raylan looked at her, then nodded. "Then stay close." The door opened, and the cold night air rushed in. Raylan stepped out, ready to face whatever Jorak had sent. He had saved the girl once. But now he had to protect her again because Jorak was watching. And he would not stop until something or someone was broken. The sun rose slowly over the dry hills around Raylan's home, bathing the rusted metal walls in soft orange. Light inside the small shelter, Lyra sat at the work table, holding a piece of broken tech in her hand. She didn't really know what it was, a scanner or maybe an old relay, but Raylan had shown her how to open it. Where to look, how to use the tools. Raylan came in with 2 mugs, steam rising from both. He handed one to her and sat across the table. "You did good yesterday," he said. "That panel you fixed worked even better than I expected." Lyra looked up shyly. "You really think so?" "I wouldn't say it if I didn't mean it," Raylan replied with a small smile. She held the warm mug in her hands, feeling the heat through her fingers. For a long time, she didn't speak. Then, her voice barely a whisper, she said, "Do you want to know what happened to me?" "Before you found me?" Raylan looked at her. He nodded, but gently. "Only if you're ready to talk." Lyra took a deep breath. Her fingers tightened around the mug. Her eyes stayed low, not meeting his. "My home was a quiet planet, forested. Peaceful. My people didn't fight wars. We didn't have weapons. We made music. We grew food. We studied stars." She paused, her voice trembling. "Then the raiders came. They burned everything. Took the strong ones for labor, the smart ones for trade. The rest were used, then thrown away." Raylan stayed silent, letting her speak at her own pace. "I was with my mother when they arrived," she continued. "She tried to hide me in a storage bin. Told me to stay quiet, but they found her, dragged her out. By the hair, I heard her scream. Then nothing." Lyra's lips trembled, her hands shaking. "They pulled me out. I kicked. I bit. They beat me. Said I had fire. That I'd sell well." She looked at Raylan now, tears in her eyes, and they were right. "I was passed from ship to ship, market to market. Sometimes I was sold. Sometimes I was taken. No one ever asked my name. I was just the girl with violet eyes." Raylan clenched his jaw, his fists tight, but he didn't interrupt. "I tried to escape once," Lyra said, voice flat. "A man broke my arm for it. He said if I tried again, he'd break my legs. I believed him. After that, I stopped fighting. I just survived." She stared into the mug like it held her memories. "Until I ended up on that dock, waiting for Jorak. I heard what he did to girls. I knew what was coming. That's why I offered you my body. I thought that's all I had left to give." Raylan finally spoke, his voice soft but firm. "You were wrong, Lyra. You have so much more than that. You have your mind, your strength, your will. That's what makes you dangerous to people like him." Lyra wiped her face with her sleeve, then gave a small laugh. "Dangerous? I can barely hold a tool straight." Raylan leaned forward. "But you're learning, you're healing, and more than that, you're still here. That means something." There was a long silence between them, not heavy, just quiet. Lyra looked at the broken tech again and picked up the soldering tool. "Teach me how to fix the power coupler," she said. Raylan nodded. "All right. Let's start with the blue wire." Later that day, Lyra sat outside, watching the wind move through the dry grass. She had cleaned up, her hair tied back, her skin no longer covered in grime. The clothes Raylan gave her still didn't fit well, but she wore them like armor. She heard footsteps and turned. Raylan approached, holding a small device. "I upgraded." "The alarm system," he said. "If anything gets within 50 meters, we'll know." "Are you scared?" she asked him. Raylan thought for a moment. "Yeah. But being scared doesn't mean we stop doing what's right." Lyra nodded slowly. "You're not like the others. Most humans I've met weren't kind. Most people, human or not, aren't kind when they think they're more powerful than you," Raylan said. "But kindness isn't weakness. It's a choice." Lyra looked at him for a long time, then asked quietly, "If Zorak comes, will you still protect me?" "I'll do more than that," Raylan said. "I'll teach you how to protect yourself, too." That night, Lyra didn't cry. She didn't tremble. She lay on the cot, staring at the ceiling. Her mind still echoed with old voices. Old screams, but they didn't own her anymore. Not fully. Raylan had given her something no one else had. Not pity, not promises, but a path. A real chance to become something more than a shadow. For the first time in years, she began to imagine a future. Not just the next moment of survival, but a future. A life not chained by fear or pain, but built on something new. Trust, skill, freedom. And maybe, just maybe, a little hope. The night air was quiet around Raylan's shelter. Too quiet. The wind had stopped blowing. And the small motion alarms near the edge of the ridge clicked once, then went silent. Raylan was inside, showing Lyra how to strip an old circuit board. For usable parts, she was learning quickly, her hands steadier now, her eyes more focused. But Raylan's head turned suddenly. His instincts, sharp from old battles, felt something shift. He looked at the screen, showing the perimeter scan. "That's strange," he said, standing slowly. It blinked, then stopped. "That's not normal." Lyra looked up. "What does that mean?" Raylan didn't answer. He walked over to the gun locker and opened it, pulling out the stun rifle and the short-range shock baton. He handed the baton to Lyra. "Stay close to me," he said, "and remember what I taught you. If something moves that isn't me, aim and strike." She nodded, gripping the baton with both hands. Her fingers shook, but not as much as before. Outside, the night was darker than usual. Clouds had covered the moons, and the stars were hidden behind shadows. Two men crouched low behind a ridge, dressed in black, faces covered. Both carried plasma knives and stunners. One of them whispered, "That's the shack." "Let's make it quick," the other replied. "Zorak said alive. But if he resists, we break him." The girl, too. If needed, they moved like ghosts. Creeping closer to the shelter, their boots made no sound. But the dust carried their scent. Raylan stepped outside just in time to catch it. He crouched, placing a small explosive sensor near the door. It clicked softly. Then he heard something. A faint scuffle on the rocks. He turned fast, raising his rifle. "Come out," he shouted. "You've got 10 seconds. Silence." Then one of the men leaped from the shadows, aiming his knife at Raylan's chest. But Raylan dodged, twisted, and fired. The stun beam hit the man's side, dropping him to the ground, twitching. Before Raylan could aim again, the second man tackled him from behind, knocking the rifle away inside the shelter. Lyra heard the crash and screams. Her heart pounded in her chest. She looked at the baton in her hands, then at the door. For a second, she froze. Then she moved. She opened the door and ran into the night, finding Raylan on the ground, struggling against the attacker. Without thinking, she swung the baton with all her strength. It hit the man's shoulder, electricity sparking through his body. He screamed and fell to the side. Raylan rolled away and grabbed his rifle again. He stood and pointed it at both attackers. "Move again, and I drop you both for good," he growled. The first man groaned, still stunned. The second, breathing hard, laughed weakly. "You don't know what you've done," he spat. "Yorick won't stop. He'll burn this whole hill to ashes just to get her back." Raylan kicked the weapon away from his hand, then let him come. They tied the two attackers with cable wire and dragged them into the empty storage unit behind the shelter. Raylan activated a field lock on the door so they couldn't escape. Lyra stood nearby, her chest rising and falling fast, sweat on her forehead, eyes wide. "You saved me," Raylan said. Wiping blood from his mouth, "You didn't freeze." "I remembered what you said," she replied, voice shaking. "You said I should learn to protect myself." "Tonight, I did," Raylan smiled. Despite the pain in his ribs, "Yeah, you did, Lyra, you really did." They went back inside, locking the main door and activating the shields for the rest of the night. Neither of them slept. They sat at the table, weapons nearby, waiting, watching, breathing. In the morning, Raylan sent out a signal to one of his old contacts, a former war buddy named Juno, who now ran security for an independent station. "Got syndicate men here," Raylan said over the comms. "Tried to take the girl. I'm requesting pickup, quiet and fast." Juno's voice came back, low and serious. "You made some dangerous enemies, Ray, but I've got your back. I'll send a team by dusk." Raylan nodded and looked at Lyra, who was sitting on the floor near the wall, watching the sun rise. "Help's coming," he told her. "We'll move you somewhere safe, far from here, somewhere Jorah can't reach." "But," Lyra didn't smile. "What if I don't want to run anymore?" She asked, "What if I want to stay and fight?" Raylan looked at her for a long time. Then he said, "Then we fight smart. We build better traps, better shields. You learn more. I teach more. We make this place more than just a hideout. We make it home." She looked up at him and nodded slowly. "Home," she whispered, like the word was something sacred. Outside, the wind returned, carrying the scent of fire, storm, and war. But inside the shelter, a girl who had once been a slave held a tool in her hand, and a man who had once walked alone now had someone worth standing for. Together, they were no longer just hiding, they were preparing. The next few days passed in quiet rebuilding. The wind still carried dust, but now it also carried the soft buzz of tools, the hum of new wires being laid, and the quiet voices of two people who were slowly turning a hiding place into a home. Raylan spent the mornings checking the perimeter, reinforcing the outer walls with scrap metal and reactive plating. Lyra worked beside him, learning to drill, weld, and program motion sensors. Her hands, once unsure, now moved with more control, more confidence. She asked questions, tried things on her own. Sometimes failed, but always tried again. She wore one of Raylan's old vests, now too big for her frame, but practical. Her hair was tied back with a piece of scrap cloth, and she no longer looked like the scared girl who had offered her body to be spared. She looked like someone rebuilding herself piece by piece. One evening, Raylan handed her a small black cube. "It's a portable generator," he said. "We can use it to power the outer lights. Want to give it a try?" Lyra turned it in her hands, found the input ports, and smiled. "Yeah, I think I can figure it out." Raylan stepped back, letting her work. He watched her with quiet pride, not because she was perfect, she wasn't, but because she was free and choosing to become something more. Later, they sat together on the metal steps outside, eating reheated ration packs. The stars above them blinked softly, the sky clear and wide. Lyra looked up and whispered, "I never thought I'd get to see the stars without bars in front of them." Raylan didn't say anything, but his chest felt heavy and warm at the same time. Lyra looked at him. "You don't talk much about your past," she said. "Were you always alone out here?" He nodded slowly. "After the war ended, I didn't know what to do. Didn't want to fight anymore. Didn't want to go back to Earth either. Too many memories, too many ghosts. So I came out here, started fixing things, staying out of trouble. You?" "We're a soldier," she said, "but you don't act like one." "I've had enough of pain," he replied. "Now, I just want peace. But sometimes peace means fighting for the ones who can't." Lyra looked down at her hands. "You fought for me." Raylan met her eyes. "You were worth fighting for." She looked away, her cheeks red in the dim light. "People used to say I was useless. That I'd never be anything but someone's. Toy even started to believe it myself. They were wrong," Raylan said. "You're learning faster than I did when I was your age. You're brave, clever, stubborn, and you've got more fire than most I've met in uniform." Lyra smiled just a little and rested her head on her knees. "This place feels safe, not just because of the walls, but because you're here." Raylan nodded. "It feels different with you here too." The next day, Juno's people arrived, quiet, armored, efficient. They took the 2 captured Syndicate men without a word and disappeared into the skies. Juno himself left behind a gift: upgraded shield cores and 2 crates of anti-personnel sensors. Raylan and Lyra installed them that same afternoon. The home was now more than protected. It was a fortress, not because they wanted war, but because they knew peace needed protection. Raylan gave Lyra her own tool belt, custom-sized, with pouches for everything. "You earned it," he said. "You're not a guest here anymore. You're my partner." Lyra held the belt like it was something holy. She didn't cry, but her throat tightened and her voice went soft. "Thank you." That night, a strange quiet settled between them. Raylan was cleaning his rifle, and Lyra sat by the small heater, staring into the flickering blue flame. After a long silence, she said, "I want to tell you something." Raylan looked up. "Go ahead. I dreamed last night." She said, "I was on a ship again, in chains, but this time I broke them. I grabbed a tool, like the one you gave me, and I fought my way out." She looked at him, eyes wide and glowing with something new. "Hope, I wasn't scared in the dream. I was angry, strong, and I escaped." Raylan leaned back, smiling. "That's a good dream." "I think it was more than a dream," she whispered. "I think it was a promise to myself." He didn't reply, just gave a small nod. That night, they didn't speak much, but something between them had changed again. Not spoken aloud, not clear, but deep, quiet, real. Days passed, and the shelter became a workshop, a home, a safe place. Lyra laughed sometimes now, softly. Unsure at first, but real. She joked with Raylan, teased him when he dropped tools, called him old man. Though he wasn't that old, Raylan caught himself smiling more too, even humming while he worked. He stopped, waiting for danger, stopped, sleeping with one eye open. It's not because the threat was gone, but because they weren't facing it alone anymore. One evening, as they sat under the stars again, Lyra whispered, "You could have taken my body that first night. You didn't." I still don't understand why Raylan looked at her with calm, steady eyes. "Because what you offered wasn't what you truly wanted to give. And I don't take anything that isn't freely given." Lyra nodded slowly. "You gave me something instead. Something I didn't even know I needed." "What's that?" "Asked a home," she said. "A real one." The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the rocky hills where Raylan and Lyra had built their home. The sky burned orange and red, but inside the shelter, the mood had changed, the motion. Alarms lit up again, all of them, one after another, fast and steady. Raylan stood up from his workbench. His hand moved without thinking, grabbing the stun rifle and loading a fresh energy cell. "They're here," he said calmly. Lyra didn't ask who. She already knew. Jorok. He hadn't forgotten. He hadn't forgiven. Outside. A heavy ship hovered above the ridge, sleek and black. 2 drop pods launched from its sides and slammed into the dirt nearby. The ground shook. Birds scattered into the sky, and from the smoke stepped Jorok himself. Tall, armored, face sharp and cruel. His eyes glowed faintly green. His men surrounded him, syndicate enforcers, armed and ready. Raylan locked the outer door and activated the defense grid. A soft blue glow hummed through the ground. Lyra stood beside him, holding the short-range pulse weapon they had built together. Her hands didn't shake this time. Jorok's voice came through a speaker attached to a drone. Raylan, I know you're in there, he said. Calm but cold. Give me the girl, and I'll let you live. I may even pay you for your trouble. Make the smart choice. Raylan pressed the come button. Come get her yourself. If you're feeling lucky, silence. Then Jorok's voice laughed. Deep and cruel. I was hoping you'd say that. The ground shook again. This time from the boots of his men charging forward. Raylan looked at Lyra. It's time. She nodded. Let's finish what we started. The first wave of attackers hit the outer wall, but the traps were ready. Shock panels under the ground triggered, dropping 2 men with a blast of electricity. The others scattered, trying to find weak spots. One climbed the roof. But Lyra was already waiting. She pulled the trigger, and the pulse weapon hit him square in the chest. He fell without a sound. Raylan moved fast, using the shadows and the walls he had built to his advantage. He activated EMP mines, forced the attackers into tight corners, picked them off one by one. He was calm, focused, like a soldier again. Inside, Lyra monitored the cameras, calling out enemy positions, guiding Raylan's movements to by the east wall. One climbing over the side pipe. Raylan responded, got it, and a moment later, a loud bang echoed outside. But then the screen went black. The signal jammed. Jorok was close. Raylan re-entered the shelter quickly. He's coming in through the main door, Lyra said, her voice tight. They both turned as the steel door exploded inward. Sparks flying, dust filling the air. Jorok stepped through, alone, tall, and silent. His armor glowed. His arms heavy with power. He looked at Lyra, then at Raylan. I gave you a chance, he said. Now I'll take what's mine. Raylan stood between him and Lyra. She's not yours. She never was, Jorok sneered. You think kindness is enough to keep her? She was born to be owned. Lyra stepped forward then, holding the upgraded pulse weapon steady. No, she said, her voice clear. I was born free. You just never let me be. Jorok charged, fast and brutal. Raylan met him head-on, blocking. The first hit with his shock baton, the 2 crashed into the wall, the shelter trembling under their weight. Sparks flew, panels cracked. Lyra dodged the chaos and circled behind. Jorok struck Raylan hard, knocking him to the ground. His blade came up, ready to kill. But before he could strike, Lyra fired. Not once, but 3 times. The blast hit Jorok in the back, staggering him. He turned, roaring. But Lyra didn't stop. She kept shooting, each shot powered with everything she had learned. Every scar, every night she had suffered. The last blast sent him crashing into the wall. His armor cracked, smoke rising from his body. He didn't move again. Raylan stood slowly, bruised and bloody. He looked at Lyra, breathing hard. You did it? Lyra lowered the weapon, her eyes wide, her hands shaking now that it was over. We did it, she said, voice trembling with emotion. The silence after the battle was strange. The shelter was damaged, walls scorched. But it was still standing. Lyra helped Raylan to the chair, wrapped a bandage around his arm. Her hands were gentle, focused, not like the scared girl he had once. Pulled from a cage, you were incredible, Raylan said quietly. You faced him head on. I had to, she whispered. He haunted my dreams. My days, my life. But now he's gone. They looked at the broken doorway together, and then at each other. The fear was still there, but so was strength. Real strength. Later that night, they sat again under the stars. The sky was clear, the wind soft. Lyra held a new tool in her hands. Something they'd use to rebuild the door tomorrow. She turned it slowly, then looked at Raylan. You didn't save me because I was useful, or beautiful, or strong, she said. You saved me because I was someone. Even when I didn't believe that myself, Raylan nodded. You always were someone. I just reminded you. Lyra leaned back and looked at the stars. I used to think I had nothing left to give. So I offered my body. I thought, that's all I had, and now? Raylan asked. Now I know. She said softly. I have everything. A name, a voice, a choice, and a home. Raylan smiled, and beside him, a girl once chained by fear finally breathed freely, for the first time in her life.